This is, again, the Brother LX3817. I'm going to do a project today that I think is a good way to test how strong this machine is. I had made a woven vest, and I want to do something to the front of it, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. I want to use brown thread, so the first thing I'm going to do is change the bobbin. You slide the plastic bobbin cover off. This is a class 15 metal bobbin, and so this is another little test of how well do the, I think this is probably a generic one, how well do these do in this bobbin case. So there's a diagram over here. You want the thread leading from the back. It's drop it in, and then, like with most of them, you pull the thread over to the right and get it under the little tension area, and then what it does, you bring it around like that. It'll cut that off right there, the extra tail, and supposedly that bobbin is now installed, and that's how easy it is. You click that back on. I have the machine threaded on the top, and we're just going to see I'll just go around this muslin square I was using the other day. I've got it on a straight stitch. You can pull the bobbin thread up if you want. Well, it is up. I may not have to do that. I saw one other video where you didn't really have to do that. The LX3014, my other brother, is a little bit finicky about the bobbin. This one does not seem finicky at all. At all. There's a little short bobbin thread. So that was easy, and that is replacing the bobbin in the LX3817 and using a generic class 15 metal bobbin. Now I have two projects I want to do today. One is the front of the vest that is woven fabric and hand woven fabric. And the other one is, believe it or not, my dog got out of his harness one day when he was having a little bit of trouble. And I want to stitch, he's a big dog, and the harness tends to loosen up a little bit as he wears it through the day. And what that did that particular day was give him enough leeway with that harness to get out of it. So what I'm going to do is stitch it, make sure it's on him tight. I'll take it off of him, and I'm going to stitch the two pieces of strapping together so that it can't get loose on him anymore. It's quite a thick harness, and I don't know if this machine will do that, but we'll find out a little later. First, we'll do the vest. Okay, let me show you what I want to do with this vest. This is hand-woven acrylic yarn, and you see this is the front of the vest, and I'm really putting in like a placket. I have marked in chalk, regular old Crayola chalk, this outer line set and an inner line set. Now, what I'm about to do is usually done, or often done, on circular knit sweaters, where you knit the body of the sweater in a round, and then you'd be doing something similar to this to make it into a cardigan. So what I want to do first is stay stitching to hold, I'm trying to get away from that light, to hold the fabric together while I do this. So I have a couple of options, and I think the best thing to do on the inner line here, which is where I have it lined up now, I'm going to do the stay stitching on that line. Let me just fix the camera here. On the inside set, because that's really the fold line. Then I will, and this is the hard, you know, like the nerve-wracking part, is cut it down the middle in between this stay stitching, which will then allow me to open up the fabric, fold it on that stitch line, and then stitch again on the outer edge. So it'll make a little bit of a rectangular opening at the front of the vest. Now this vest, I could have done this on one panel before I put it together, but I waited till afterward. I can get this vest on without a problem. It's just a little bit snug putting it on. So by opening up just the front top of this vest, it'll be just easier to get on and off more quickly. So this is stay stitching on the inner marking to hold the fabric together before I cut it. I'm gonna lighten the tension just a little bit. It was set on 4 from the factory. I'm gonna put it on 3 because the fabric is so thick. And this is what we're gonna find out about this machine, is can it actually do this? Now obviously before I cut it, and I have kind of a facing on the inside there, so I should be able to tell if it's stitched well. I want to check the stitching before I cut it. So I'll go over one more. Now at the bottom of the rectangle, I'm probably going to have to clip those corners in order to get the fabric to fold flat. Okay, that looks a little crooked, but it also looks like it's stitched fine. Check my lines. And this is quite thick of a fabric, which is why I made it that way. It's going to be very warm. And using simple Crayola chalk, that will all wash out. I'm just noticing this is really the presser lifter bar. It's really thin plastic on this. So forward and reverse through the thick fabric, not a problem. The thread cutter on this is up on the side of the machine on the left. Boy, isn't that simple. I'm in a cramped space here, so Let's just see how that looks on the inside before I cut it. That looks fine. It looks fine. So now what I'm going to be doing is cutting right in between those two lines. I'll be clipping the corners a little bit here, folding it under to the wrong side, each side, and then stitching it again. So now, look at the thickness of that now. And that's where I may have an issue with this machine. We'll see. Next step is cutting. Okay, and here you can see how I did just cut the fabric inside the stitching. And I have a couple of choices here. So where I did the stay stitching is actually going to be the fold line. And I need to pin this back and then stitch through it, and basically I'm done. I did clip down toward the bottom. So I have these are raw ragged edges that are already starting to come off. I have seam tape that I could fold it, pin it, and put the seam tape on, but in this case it's going to add another layer of fabric even though it's very thin. So let me go ahead and get this pinned, and we'll see how the machine does going through the folded thick fabric. This is already 2 layers plus a facing. So that would be 4 layers of hand woven that the machine would have to go through. We'll see how it does. Okay, and the way I've done this right now is without the seam tape. I've got it pinned in place. The dog is helping me here. Pinned in place, and I'm going to stitch over it just to get the fabric in place. I'm probably going to add seam tape at the bottom there, just because that's what would take all the tension when you're putting this on over your head. But I don't want to add that extra layer of fabric yet. I just want to get this stitched in place. And then you could always stitch the seam tape in place by hand as well. But that is how that's going to open up the top of the vest and make it easier to get it on and off. Okay, I changed the stitch length a little bit. I'm on the dial, it's number 10. Gives me a little bit of a longer stitch to go through this. And this is going to be the issue right at the top there, where I have those extra layers. So that's like 3 stitches in place. But now if I back up a little bit and then pick this up, what happens with weaving is it gets stuck on the feed dogs when it's this thick. And you just have to get it to the point where the fabric is hitting most of the feed dog to get it to move through easily. And this area might really be too thick. And you don't want to just keep stitching in place without it moving. There we go. So it's just that top area with the extra thickness. Now this, I want to make sure this is, and I just do that with the presser foot up. Hopefully that won't be a problem. Once I get this tacked down and in place, I can go over it more than once. So that pin isn't doing an awful lot of help with keeping that under there. But you can see how you have to kind of be able to manipulate the fabric as you need to. Now because of I just stitched the other part with the presser foot up, but because this fabric is so thick, it may not even have made a big, huge difference. And you can see I missed a little piece of yarn. So that area is definitely going to get a piece of seam tape. I just want to shove the vest through here. But I have to say, for such a lightweight machine, this is doing better than I thought it would. And it looks like I'm going to have a loose piece of yarn here too. So that would happen whether it's knitting or weaving. Now here's that other thick area. And that's how tight it is under the presser foot. Okay, so there are really only a couple of loose threads. At the bottom, there are loose threads here, but they can be trimmed off. So right here, this needs to be pulled down a little bit more. Over here is where I had the presser foot up. It looks fine. So that's something. So now, what I can do now is just trim off any of this, and I could go over it again with the seam tape in place, which would only show one line of stitching on the front, really, because that sinks in. And it'll look neater on the inside. It won't have 2 or 3 stitches, but it'll catch these rough edges. The issue is going to be keeping them down and trying to get them caught, even though I'm going to be stitching probably 1/4 of an inch away. So I might even use masking tape to hold them in place, depending on once I trim this. But then I'm going to get that on my needle. So let me just trim it, and then I'll put the seam tape in place at the bottom. I think that's the only place I really need it. Okay, so this is really just a reinforcement at the bottom there. I have 2 rows of stitching on the rest of it on the sides, which should hold everything in place. But this at the bottom, there were 2 threads I need to catch. I do not have masking tape on there. I'm going to go very close to the edge as I stitch this in order to really try to hold those 2. There were 2 threads. I just want to start it by hand. Pull that first pin out. Those 2 pins were holding those yarns under. So it went a little bit crooked. I didn't keep it perfectly even when I went back. But that's 2 rows of stitching over that one area that was loose. Let me just... Now the reason I didn't do the sides was because it would have been a little bit more involved with me taking this type of seam tape and making mitered corners at the bottom. Because this is on the inside and I'm not really worried about it, I could also now take 2 other pieces and go along the edge on the inside if I wanted to. But what I really wanted to do was just catch the yarn at the base of that. So I'll trim these threads off, and you can see how easy it is, really, to just go ahead and open up a fabric, even a hand-woven fabric. And making the vest, the item, a little bit more user-friendly. And I think this is great, this machine did that. So on the front, this is one that got pulled over to the right. I'll just tack that in by hand. But on the front, this looks like a U shape on the front of the vest. But makes it so much easier to get on and off. It gives you, this is about 3.5 inches deep, and that's only about 1 inch across. An easy way to make clothes more comfortable. Next, I'm going to try and do the dog's harness. And that is what the vest looks like when I'm done with that. And then obviously the chalk will just wash out. Very simple to do. If you're doing this with knitting and making a cardigan, excuse me, you have to make sure that you may even have to go half a size up on the knitting, because you have to make sure you leave enough to really fold this over enough. And on a cardigan, I would probably use ribbon down the front. And I may still do that. I could put ribbon on the inside, make that look neater. Simple to do, easier than I thought. And the LX3817 did it without a problem. This is really thick. I just found this perfect ribbon online. Perfect Grosgain ribbon. And I'm going to buy it, and when it gets here, I will be adding that to the inside of the placket on the vest. It's a 1.5 inch wide, which I thought was too wide at first. But that's going to be, it's Grosgain ribbon. It's going to be perfect for the inside. Okay, now we're going to do the harness. And it's really funny, I have a new dog. I had lost Cocoa Bean last year, and it's really hard losing a service dog, even when you get a new service dog. And this guy, he's quite something, actually. He was supposed to be a beagle, and he looks kind of like a beagle, but he kept growing and growing and growing. He's actually a foxhound, and stopped growing at about 62 pounds. So one day we needed him to get in a truck, and he did not want to get in the truck. I have since learned that the actual truck we're talking about is an extremely large SUV, and he needed to get in the back in order to go somewhere, and he just did not want to get in the back of the truck. And within 5 minutes, I was all set to get him in there. The person driving was kind of like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? And with a service dog, that's a distraction. And then that person kind of took over a little bit on how to handle a situation that wasn't really a situation. Anyway, the dog said, "You two are nuts. I'm not going anywhere." And he got out of this harness and a head collar harness all at the same time, and was basically naked in the road. So it wasn't much fun. And the reason he got out of the harness, he broke the head collar, but the reason he got out of the harness was because this buckle right here, and this is a good harness, it's happened on almost all of his harnesses. I have to stitch them in place because the buckles loosen up. So here we have the offending harness, and I just want to, I'm going to switch the stitch length back to 9, which is a little bit tighter. You can see here there's actually 3 layers because of the way they've made the harness. This is them stitching the buckle on there, actually. That's the adjusting part. And so I don't need to try to go through 3 layers. I can go through the 2 layers that are further away from that, because it still will keep it from moving and not adjusting. You should only do this when you're pretty sure your dog's not going to either gain or lose weight. He's pretty consistently a big marshmallow 62-pound wonderful dog. Wonderful dog. So let's just go. Now I want to do it at least 3 times because he is such a big dog. So again, this is the LX3817, and here I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like one of those little C machines. It absolutely has proven me wrong today. I still don't like all the plastic on it. The LX3014 has a slightly heavier plastic for the presser foot lifter itself, and so I'm still not real happy about that. I'm just thinking that if you went to reach for something quickly, you might actually snap it off. But I'm totally spoiled by my antique machines that you don't even have to think of things like that. So let's just go back to my muslin and do a little bit of filling in. So no problems with tension, no problems with using a metal bobbin, a generic class 15 metal bobbin. 2 layers of webbing, which is probably a 1/16 of an inch thick. So 1/8 of an inch of webbing and all that thick fabric on the vest. The Brother LX 3817.